Hello, hello, hello. I'm Simona Costantini, and I'm obsessed with helping you connect to your purpose and teaching you about all things mindset, business, podcasting, and everything in between. I realized I deserved and wanted more from this thing called life, so I changed my beliefs, healed my hurt, and made it my mission to help you do the same. I'm a recovering people pleaser turned life coach and podcast producer. I teach busy business owners how to confidently fall in love with their life and business and live it on their terms. On this show, you get everything raw and real, from inspirational guest interviews to deep dives into topics like life, relationships, business, purpose, growth, and mindset. I lay it all on the line every single time. Think of this as your one-stop shop to help you live a more purposeful and inspired life. This is the Happiness Happens podcast. Are you ready to hear this inspiring conversation? Let's dive on in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. I am Simona, and I'm super stoked that you're here to join us for another incredible conversation with an amazing guest. This week, we're chatting with Dave Fontaine, and Dave is a spiritual mentor, coach, and business consultant. He helps spiritual mindset and transformational coaches crush fear once and for all, step into their higher self so that they can create more impact in the world and become more powerful and impactful six-figure leaders. His journey started in 2017 after a supernatural experience and Kundalini awakening, where he downloaded a lot of information. He realized he was meant to be a teacher and a guide for spiritual people, so he left his job, traveled the world, and went all in. He is all about alignment, self-mastery, impact, and spiritual transformation. He's all about helping you step into your higher self and upgrading your reality. There's so much that we spoke about in this conversation. We chatted about spirituality, awakening, higher self, but we also chatted about cryptocurrency, which is a topic we have not yet explored yet on the podcast. So I'm super excited about this conversation. It left me with so much insight, so much knowledge, and I'm just so grateful for Dave and everything that he shared. I hope you're stoked about this episode. Cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. Please be sure to join us on Instagram or on social media. Let us know that you're listening. Let us know what you loved. And if you like this episode, rate, review, and subscribe, guys. Like, this is what's up. I'm super excited that you're here. Let's dive into this conversation. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode on the podcast. Very excited to have Dave here today with us. We are going to have such a crazy conversation about spirituality and manifesting and business and all of the fun things mixed into one. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about the journey that's brought you to where you are today?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I really like listening to your podcast. And so my journey started in 2017. And like many people, I went to a very dark time before my awakening. In my case, it was a lot of depression, a lot of repressed emotion, a lot of frustration, and really feeling out of alignment when I was working my 9 to 5. And just one day, I just, something broke inside of me. So I wanted to end all of this. I was really at the end of the tunnel. And I just asked God to basically save me, give me a sign, like give me something, because like I just can't figure out this game that is life. And I immediately, I think it's during the same day, I had this thought that came to me that was saying, reprogram your brain. Just reprogram your brain. And I was like, what does that mean? So I started looking online, started watching YouTube videos, and went very deep, went to bed. Then the next day I did the same thing, watched more YouTube videos, started learning more about the subconscious mind. And I was not at all into spirituality, into personal development, like zero. I was all about sports, about these type of thing. And that's the moment, just watching a video, I had a moment of epiphany. Like, I don't even know how to explain it with word, but it was like a download of information where I I call it a consciousness upgrade. It's like I had the software upgrade in my brain, and at the same time, all my repressed emotion all my fears, all the emotion I've been repressing all my life, all this anger, this fear, was kind of released from my body. So
Mm.
it almost felt like I lost 20 pounds instantly. I had tears in my face. I was laughing at the same time. It was a very weird moment. And it was like an epiphany. And at this moment, I just knew um, who I was, that I was meant to be a teacher, a messenger, and that a lot of people would go through the spiritual path. That was in 2017, that a lot of stuff would come in the following years, and that I had to be ready for this. And that's how it started. So that's how I kind of woke up to my real identity as the creator of my reality. And that's the moment I immediately left my job and went all in on this path. And that's the all happened in one crazy moment, if you want.
Wow. Okay, there's so many thoughts that are going through my head right now because you and I have
Yeah.
had a separate conversation about Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Remember we were talking the other day about him and you were asking whatever. It sounds so similar, not the same, but similar to what he experienced as well when he went through his spiritual awakening of this like moment. And so hearing you say that is so powerful for me because like it actually happens. You know what I mean? It's not just a story that people create,
Yeah.
not just a thing that
No.
people
No.
say. It's so
Yeah.
crazy. Then my other question for you from there though is how did you start to explain to people your experience and why you left your job, like all of it, you made a major life change right after, so like how did you explain that to different people?
It felt like my old identity was kind of deleted from my system.
Wow.
So I no longer identified with all the things I wanted. For example, I was a sports journalist. I always wanted to to play sports, and because I could never fulfill that dream because I didn't have any confidence when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I became a sports journalist, but it was like a way to replace that dream. But the more I was working, the more I was realizing that it was not fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, it was like an identity shift that happened. I called it a consciousness upgrade. Basically, instead of having thoughts about why am I unhappy, why my life is looking like this, trying to find like the solution to my problem, to my situation, which was being depressed, being frustrated, hating my life. And then it's like as a software upgrade, a conscious upgrade where I already had the answers within me. I no longer had to seek them. And my identity was like, I don't want to do this. I already knew that I could not keep working a lot in a job and having a life that I hated. So I always knew I wanted to travel. So it was an easy decision for me. I had enough money to afford it. So I just went to my boss and said, look, I'm working 2 weeks. It's over. I sold my apartment, my car, everything. And I was excited because I had no fear. That's the thing. It's always about fear. And when you're totally free from fear, you can actually listen to your soul and follow the fastest path to your joy, to your excitement. And for me, it was traveling the world and going deep into this new identity of discovering spirituality, my own personal transformation. So I left everything that was not in alignment with my soul, and I just
Mm-hmm.
went all in with this.
That's incredible. And with the idea of fear, how do you how do you uh, explain to people or help people move through the fear? Like, how do you explain to them that fear is just this idea that's floating around in our heads? Like, how can someone start to shift their ideas around fear so that the fear is not holding them back?
That's a very good question. I would say that it starts with disidentifying with these thoughts that are rooted in fear,
Mm,
because they're not yours. They're not your thoughts. They come from a part of your psyche that we call the shadow. And so fear is basically something that served us as very young kids. but it's something that we no longer need. But the problem is we experience reality as adults through everything that went in our lives during childhood.
Mm.
So unless we get rid of these things, fear is still there,
Mm-hmm.
and it prevents us from choosing what we want. It prevents us from expressing our true identity as creators, as powerful beings, because fear is basically rooted in survival,
Mm.
and we're not meant to survive. That's just like a built-in program we have. But when you get rid of it, then you can actually thrive. You can actually choose from a place of trust all the things you want. Always make the right energetic choice, expressing yourself powerfully instead of letting fear holding you back and keeping you stuck in the same pattern, emotional pattern rooted in fear that you first experienced as a child.
That's really, really powerful. And I think really important too, like you said, the part about, energy, and then you also said the part about your shadow. Can you tell us a little bit about shadow work?
Yeah.
What goes into shadow work, but then also like what is shadow mastery?
So basically, the way I see it is that the easiest way to explain, and the way I like to explain it, is that you're basically a channel or a vehicle of consciousness, and basically within you you have a shadow, which is fear, and you have your soul or your light consciousness. And basically there's a battle between both all the time, between trust and fear. And the goal to actually be able to get what you want in life, to be what we call emotionally free, to be happy, is to get rid of fear. Because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, fear is always the source of any problem. Any problem you think you have in your life is at some point is a symptom of a deeper problem. And the problem is often emotional and rooted in fear. And it comes from your shadow because, like I said, we experience the same pattern from childhood, from what I call our shadow memory, or the moment we had emotional upset when we were young. And so the shadow will still be there because it wants to protect you. Like I said, it's a survival mechanism. It wants to protect you
Mm-hmm.
and it associates survival with familiarity. So it keeps you stuck in your comfort zone into what's familiar, the same beliefs, the same pattern, the same circumstances. So shadow work basically, I'm not really that much into shadow work because the way I see it is that people do shadow work. It's a way to integrate fear, and the way I see it is that you want to get rid of it completely because that's keeping you in this survival consciousness. Even if you're okay with fear, you can actually alchemize the energy behind it because it's basically code. You're basically a channel of code of consciousness. So it's a way to shift the code in your psyche that gets triggered when there's an output in your outer world that triggers something that then your system uses memory data and recreate the same fear-based reaction you had when you were a child. So the goal is to get rid of the fear-based energy that you're carrying and that is being triggered every time, because fear means that you're giving your power away all the time. The
Mm-hmm.
moment you're triggered, the moment you're worried, upset, it means you're giving your power away to something outside of you, and what's outside of you has absolutely no power over you. And so what I call shadow mastery, it's basically spiritual alchemy, if you want. So it's a way to it's like shadow work but on steroids. So it's much deeper, it's more intense, but what it does is that every time you're being triggered, worried, upset, it's actually an opportunity for you to destroy that illusion of powerlessness you're in, to
Mm-hmm.
take your power back. So you're using all the things that are bothering you, all your triggered, all your negative thoughts, and you're alchemizing, you're transmuting the energy, your shadow, and what you're doing is you're transmuting that into trust. So the battle between fear and trust inside of you starts shifting because all the places you were giving your power away you stop doing it and you're taking your energy back. So it starts creating a shift in consciousness within you. And it's what I call a conscious upgrade, like I experienced more spontaneously in the past. But that's basically what's going on inside of you. So shadow mastery, it's mastering your shadow so that you stop giving your power away, because like I said, fear is the source of all problem. And when you destroy the source code of your problem, which is your shadow, then you become free. So what happens is that your shadow is the source of your negative thoughts. So when you do this, you're basically destroying or silencing your negative thoughts. Over time, you're free from all these negative thoughts. And when you're free from all your negative thoughts, well, you're free to do whatever you want, because you're no longer have this voice within you that is telling you that either you're not good enough, that is not going to work, or that people will judge you, and all these sorts of lies that our shadow tells us to protect us.
That is such a good point. How can you start to, I'm so in awe, like that's so powerful because I think that it's so true. Fear is lies. Like it's not true. You know what I mean? Like it's not, there's no substance and there's no reason why that fear needs to be a reality. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that is like, when you really start to break it down, like you're saying, if you take it all and you start to break it down, you kind of realize at the end of the day, and you come to this conclusion that, you know, the fear came from an experience that you had. And then because of that experience, now it's impacted your life in this area, and this area. And it's crazy because I don't think enough people know this.
Yeah.
So could you, you know, maybe share with our listeners like 1 or 2 ways to start to reprogram the code that's within you?
Well, first of all, in terms of your shadow, it's really the first step is really to disidentify with them, because the moment you're being triggered, worried, upset, you have to realize that what you're telling yourself in your mind is not true, and it's not true 100% of the time, not 95, not 90, 100% of the time. So you have to be able to separate yourself from that fear, that energy, and the voices associated to them. Otherwise, because we've been living our lives this way for such a long time, and the first problem is that we believe that we are our negative thoughts. And that's it's the attachment to our negative thoughts, it's the emotional attachment to this that keeps us stuck in the loop where we believe our negative thoughts, and therefore it creates a corresponding feeling, and therefore we feel even more powerless, and then we reinforce the identification with our negative thoughts, and then we're stuck, and all we're doing is giving our power more and more all the time. So disidentifying with your negative thoughts is the key. The other thing in that process that I call that is shadow mastery, which is basically spiritual alchemy. It's really to speak to your shadow, because you have disidentified with it. So you want to speak to your shadow, but from the truth. So you're stepping out of the illusion because you have disidentified with your shadow. Therefore, you're saying to your shadow basically that you know that fear is an illusion. You know that whatever is telling you is not true. It's a lie 100% of the time. And then you destroy what it says with truth. And there's specific code that you want to say, but basically you want to speak from the truth. So basically you're saying, I know it's not true because I am the creator of my reality. I am powerful. And there's different pattern that you want to create according to the situation. So it's like a system where you can recognize this is the archetype that has been triggered. So then I transmute that shadow archetype into a light archetype with, for example, if it's the prostitute. So the prostitute is the pleaser. It's people pleaser. It's begging to be saved. It's these kind of begging to be saved might be more the victim, but it's like acting from a lack of self-worth. When you're that illusion, it's the prostitute, or it's a lack of self-love. So when you recognize that pattern, that is, you recognize the voice of the prostitute, then you transmute these codes by speaking from the lover, from a place of love, of self-worth, of like, I am worthy of what I want. And then it's two things. It's about the words you're speaking, but the energy that you're speaking, because words are always codes when you're speaking. You're always what we call casting spells, but the spell is just not the words, it's the energy behind the word. And the energy must, well, it must be free from fear. It must be a clear energy that is pure trust when you're speaking. That's how you make your affirmation actually work.
Wow, that's really, really, really powerful. I've heard that thing before about, everything that you're saying is like spell casting essentially, but I can't remember why. I can't remember like what that's rooted in or like where it comes from. Um, but
Yeah, but yeah, it's like, because basically what we are is information. We are, reality is information. That's all it is. What we call energy is patterns of information. And so the energy you're speaking, it's vibration. It's the vibration in your body that's get out of your mouth, and that creates, but it's just codes. And so it's all there is. There's just code. We are in a very complex quantum computer simulation, if you want to explain it this way. And it's hard to see it with that perspective, but that's basically what the universe is. But when you go down to the root, you could say that everything is just information. It's code. And so when you understand how to change the code behind your own personal reality and your own personality is a holographic projection of you, then you know that the codes that you have to shift are actually within you and not outside of you.
I love that. Are there still times where you get negative thoughts and like can they creep in, or have you kind of mastered like how to shift it?
It's very rare, but the thing is that because I've done the work so many times, the moment I have a negative thought, what's happening, it's almost like the shadows like, can I speak? And I'm like, I already know what's going on in my mind. It's like, I'll already know what you're going to say. It's bullshit. It's a lie. I don't care what you're going to say. So it makes the process very very easy to alchemize the shadow, if you want.
I love that. It's good. So what would you say are, hold on, I'm going to pause for 1 second. I have like an echo.
I think it's I don't know why it disconnected, I think.
Oh.
And I don't know why, because my bed.
That's okay. You can take them out if you want.
But can you still hear me well?
Yeah.
Because I heard like disconnected in my ear. That's why I was speaking and I was hearing disconnected. And I was like, what's going on? So that's why my last answer was I might look lost. But
oh, that's so funny. No, that's okay.
But I don't know why it does this. I don't know.
No,
Maybe
that's all good. Don't worry. It's all good. The sound is actually the same with it, without it. So that's okay. But I could hear myself like repeating back to myself, and I was like, why am I hearing myself? Anyways, okay.
Maybe I can lower the sound from my computer.
No, it's totally fine. I can't hear it anymore. It's gone.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna pick back up. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, that's really, really, really powerful. And I'm curious, when you talk about like higher self, higher consciousness, what are some ways that people can connect to their higher consciousness in like a really like authentic way? Because what happens is, and what I see a lot of is like people get frustrated. You know what I mean? People get frustrated that they're not getting the message. People are frustrated that they're not hearing what they want to hear from their higher self, or they're not listening, or they need the guidance, but they don't know how to get it, and all these different things. So do you have any tips for maybe listening in and also for aligning with your higher self?
Well, I don't want to repeat myself, but like I said, it's all about trust. It's all about trust. So the reason you're not hearing it is because you still have fear inside of you. So you're operating from a lower frequency. So your soul is in much higher frequency, free from fear, free from all this distortion, this lower frequency that everything that's going on in the world is meant to keep us in this. It's like a frequency barrier that keeps us in frequency that resonate with fear. So so to be in alignment and to hear your higher self, it's to this the best way is to alchemize your shadow, and to the best way to do it is to understand that all your fear, the biggest fear that you have, are probably the place where you've been giving your power away. And so they're pointing at you where you can take your power back. And as you take action despite the fear, so that you can take her back and move towards your goal, move toward your vision, then you just realign yourself with your higher self, with your soul. Because what the soul seeks is basically joy, freedom, fulfillment. So when you start listening to those things and you follow despite the fear, despite the circumstances where you're like, I cannot listen to my soul, but you still do it, then you realign yourself. You align yourself with your higher self, and then it's easier to tap into your intuition, your inner guidance, because you start trusting yourself, you start trusting life. So it's not just about, I'm going to do it, it's about taking the action. You must express trust through your words and behaviors, but you must feel it within first. And that's where the alchemy of fear, of consciousness, and destroying your shadow becomes very important.
I really, really like that. And then what does it mean to like destroy, to alchemize? Like if you could describe what that means, it's like, I find a hard time like I have a hard time like wrapping my head around it from a spiritual sense.
Okay. So basically is turning the energy, it's basically turning shadow into light.
Ah.
It's turning fear into trust. Because trust is the path of your soul, and fear is the path of your shadow. Trust and fear are the opposite of each other. So you're always energetically at every moment of your life operating at a certain level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That level of consciousness means that you're expressing a certain level of trust energetically through your words and your behaviors.
That's
And you're
really
not
cool.
expressing the level of trust of your higher self, of you and your vision, because there's fears inside of you. So it's the battle between your shadow and your light, or your soul consciousness going on within you, that prevents you from actually being now this person that is totally free from fear, the highest level of trust possible, which means it's basically faith. That's what is the highest level of trust. It's like being grateful before you can see it. It's being totally emotionally free despite your current circumstances, so that you can now, living in the now, again, totally living in the now and being in the now space, the version of you that is your higher self. So the highest level of trust, the version you see in yourself in your bigger vision. But what's preventing you from being it is always fear.
That's so, so, so powerful. I've been thinking a lot about the topic of fear this week and talking about it a lot too. And I feel like it's just this, I know we keep saying it, but I really do feel like it's just this big story that someone else has created for you, that they've decided how you should show up and how you should live, and then you believe it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like when you really boil it down and like talking to you, like when you really think about it, why do all of these things matter in terms of like what other people think and the judgment and all this stuff, right? It's kind of like, who said that those are the things that are important? Who said that those are the things that we need to care about? But also
Yeah.
it's like, why can't it be anything different? Like, why can't people find that underlying peace and like that soul fulfillment? I just think so many people don't know how to achieve it.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a part of us, that mechanism, but it's also society that is programming or conditioning us to always seek outside of ourselves for something. So we operate from the false premise that we are human or incomplete or powerless. And that keeps us in this survival shadow consciousness. And so the whole world is designed to keep human in this, like I said, as if there's a frequency barrier where everything is all about fear. And that reinforce our attachment to basically living backward, because we keep looking outside of ourselves all the time to be happy instead of going within to find happiness. We're looking for something to make us feel good instead of destroying our own fear and choosing to feel good and take action from that state. So we're basically living backward. And that's what evil is. Evil is live backward.
Mm-hmm.
Evil is basically fear. It's living backward, because when you operate from fear, you're giving your power away. So you're living backward instead of taking your power and creating what you want. If you want to, whatever you want to experience, it must come from you, and um, not what the world wants you to believe. Because again, all these belief system, all this way of living right now, we're seeing it on Earth. It's like the world is getting on on a situation where it's almost asking to be destroyed. All this corruption, this institution, this way of living, whether it's politics, economy, health, it's like they're showing us more and more that it's built on corruption, it's built on lie, so that it can be destroyed. So I think we're coming into a place as a civilization where we are called to face our shadow, to face fear, and finally realizing once and for all that it's all lie, and we have always been powerful being, that it's time to take our power back.
I love that idea of taking power back. I think it's so important, because I think fear just keeps so many people small and keeps them stuck, keeps them not, you know, believing in their dream, or that the reality that they want for themselves is possible. And I think that, you know, a lot of the times when people hear of success and money and this and this and this, it always has to do with how much money you make if you're a business owner, how much you brought in, how many this, like, but it's like, you know, it's not really about that. It actually couldn't be further from the truth. Like, yes, it's important to be able to make money and have money to contribute to society and do all of these different things. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you're operating from purpose instead of the opposite, that's so powerful, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said, that I believe that the soul seeks joy, freedom, and fulfillment. It doesn't seek a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
You're going to make money in your business if you focus on the impact that you create. Money will be a byproduct of you helping people. But if you're in business just because of the money, then it's going to end up being a 9 to 5 where you're going to have to grind like crazy. And because it's not necessarily easy, especially starting a business. Eventually you create momentum, but yeah, it's all about, like you said, purpose and what you're bringing to the world, what your soul wants you to bring to this world. Because if you want to help, it means that there's another part of the coin. It means that there are people that actually ready to receive that help energetically. That's why you're feeling this desire to help.
I love that. I love that, because that really beats and sort of like opposes the mindset and the belief that, you know, there isn't enough to go around, or there are not enough clients in the space, or, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff. But that's so true. I love what you just said. Why would it ever become an idea if it wasn't something that you could actually live out and do?
Yeah, because the way I see it is that, well, first of all, the universe is perfect. It's like a very, very so much complex system that we cannot understand, because it's like trillions of times too complex for us, for our mind to process this. But I believe that if you are in a way and you have a desire, it means there's the other part somewhere that's going to create a match, like masculine and feminine. And the other way I see it in terms more of business is that usually you're meant to help people who are in a similar journey as you are, but just a few steps behind you. So wherever you are on your journey, there are people that are actually 2, 3, 4 steps behind you, and that would benefit immensely from having a coach or a mentor or someone to help them move towards their vision or their goals faster wherever they're at. Even when you work with 7 or 8 figure business, they also have a business mentor. So it's like there's always someone you can learn from that was where you are 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Mm.
So I believe that we have, again, it's pure shadow. And I add this at the beginning of my journey, thinking that there's so much competition, that there's who's going to want to work with me, or where am I going to find clients? But the truth is that if you're able to position yourself the right way, there's always people that you can speak to that are on a very similar path as you are,
Mm.
and that would probably be happy to have help.
It's so true. It's so true. And so I was thinking about this like for a while too. It's like, how do you blend this with the business piece as well? Because I know you're a business mentor and I know you work with 6-figure business owners, right? And so I mean, I guess without giving all your secrets away, how do you take this approach in business? Is it more from like a spiritual lens that you're helping people, or?
I think it's about both, because the spiritual aspect is more like it's about like purpose, about impact. So like I don't work with people who do e-commerce or do these type of business because it's just not in alignment with me.
Yeah.
So basically I work with people who want to create an impact with people, positive impact, like I said, helping people who are on a similar journey, who need help, because right now the world needs to shift. And that means that there's more and more people that are ready to become a greater version of themselves. Like we said, taking your power back, facing your fears, going for your goals, your dream, your vision. And so that's for me, what makes me fulfilled. It's to
Mm.
see people helping the people who need their help. But also, like I said, on my journey, what I've discovered is that a lot of entrepreneurs, just like me, people becoming coach, even if they learn all the marketing and sales strategies, they're still stuck like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They believe they have a business problem, but actually they have a fear problem. The imposter syndrome, the fear of selling, the fear of asking for thousands of dollars, the fear of talking on the phone, the fear of reaching out to people, of putting yourself out there, of being judged, all these sorts of fear, it's your shadow that is keeping you stuck. And that's why so many coaches are frustrated or not growing their business the way they want, even if they have hired a business mentor for $10,000 or $20,000. 80% of them still struggle to get to 10K months
Mm.
because of the fear that is inside of them. So for me, the people I work with are often more spiritual people, so they can understand this perspective of what we've talked about shadow, about
Yeah.
fear. And so it's really about creating the right foundation to create an impact with people, but also with your purpose, with your help, with your gifts, but also at the same time amplifying your own spiritual transformation so that you learn how to take your power back, and that becomes like fuel for your business growth.
I love that so much. That resonates a lot. It's really, really good because it's really, really true. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, like people say that, being a business owner is hard, being an entrepreneur is hard, being all these different things is hard. It's hard when, the business doesn't grow, but it doesn't grow because of your beliefs. So that is like super, super, super key. And I'm really glad that you said that.
Yeah.
Crazy. Dave, um, okay, I want to ask you a question. And the question that I ask is one that I ask all my guests when they come on the show. And it's,
Okay.
how can you create a little more happiness in your day every day, starting today?
You listen to your joy. Very
Mm.
simply, your joy is like your soul's compass. It's just that the way we've been conditioned to live, we've been conditioned to ignore our joy for the things we have to do. So I would say that every single day, instead of listening only to the things that you have to do, take time to do the things that you want to do. What are the things that bring you the most joy in the present moment? Because when you're in a state of joy, you're in a state of trust. So you're not hearing your negative thoughts. Your shadow is not there. You're just in alignment with your soul. And that's where you get intuition, inspiration, and those things. So if you're a musician and you like playing music, try to find more time to do it every day.
Mhm.
If you're enjoying writing, take more time to do it. So, because like for me, I remember the past version of me, and I could see that I was never doing the thing that I wanted. It was always working and then doing all these tasks that we have to do. But if you just take the time to listen to what you actually want, and again, your joy, what is your joy right now in the present moment? If you follow this, you're going to train yourself to be more in alignment with your soul, with your higher self. And that's going to create ripple effect in your life because, like I said, you might get inspiration. That's where you might add the inspiration to start a business. That's where you'll get maybe the intuition that you should travel, you should go to that place, you should go get a coffee right now, I want a coffee. And then you go and paf, you meet your soulmate, whatever it is. It's about listening to your feelings to make decision because they're there to guide you basically.
I love that. That's beautiful. And where can our listeners find you?
So I'm very active on Instagram at the moment. So anyone can follow me. My Instagram is the Spiritual Manifester, and I'd love to connect with your audience and just have a chat and get to know every one of you.
Amazing. Dave, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This
It
is
was
an
a pleasure.
incredible conversation. I'm really, really grateful for your time. So thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much for everyone for tuning in to this week's episode on the podcast. Please let Dave and I know that you're listening. Tag us online, share what you love the most, and share this episode with someone you know needs to hear this message. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week for next week's episode. And just remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it. Well, it looks like we've made it to the end of this episode. I'm so grateful for you tuning into this week's episode, and I cannot wait to see you over on the next one. If you loved this conversation and this topic as much as I did, please feel free to leave us a rating or a review wherever you're listening. It takes just a second, and it is so important for us so that we can make sure to deliver this content to those who need it. I'm wishing you the most beautiful day wherever you are in the world, and remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.